Well, it is 5:30, so whenever you're ready, we can start.
You're on. Go ahead.
All right, we will call the meeting to order, and I will just remind everyone in that we do have cameras and speakers all through the room, so even though you're in the audience and that, when you're talking, it will pick it up and put it on the recording. So with that, Jen, would you take roll, please?
Commissioner Corbin.
Here.
Commissioner Thill.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Waldner.
Here.
And Mayor Lindsay.
Here. You have before you the agenda for this evening.
Make a motion we approve the agenda for this evening.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Seeing no appearances or acknowledgments, is there anything anyone wants to remove from the consent calendar?
Motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, under old business, public hearing on the petition for vacation of a street, portion of Industry Avenue South. Chad, you want to address this, please?
Thank you. I can say a few things, Your Honor and Commission. Included in the agenda packet is a notice of publication for the petition of vacation. Notice of the public hearing for this hearing tonight. A resolution actually vacating the parcel requested, a petition signed by the adjacent landowners, and then a map which highlights the area proposed to be vacated. If you look at the map, I just maybe would just draw your attention to that. 14th Street Southeast on the south portion of Industry Avenue. It was originally platted as contemplated in the master plan that LEIC is Lake Area Improvement Corporation is the owner of that property down there, and they platted a stub street there. I'll call it a stub street. It just where they anticipated extending 14th Street along. That was about 10 years ago. Recent developments and recent plans in that industrial park have made them change their plans where they will not install 14th Street across to Washington Avenue. And so this is, in part, I guess you could say, a housekeeping matter to remove that from the public right-of-way, and then that would be able to be reverted to the private property again. So that's how I would describe it. And I believe, I would be standby for questions.
Yeah, it's a very short segment there. So, questions or comments? Okay, if not, do we have a motion?
Hold on just a minute, please. On the resolution itself, you're going to jump down to the resolution, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yes, no, right.
Yep.
So we will go down to under new business, resolution number 2019-07, vacate a portion of a street, portion of Industry Avenue South. And that's where I thought it was.
Okay. And as per a conversation with Mr. Erickson this morning, if you would take a look at that resolution, third paragraph, we want to strike the phrase during the period of 20 years.
So it goes indefinite?
It hasn't been there 20 years, right, sir?
That's right. That referred to a provision of the statute where if the plat has been on the record for 20 years, this plat has only been on the record for about 10 years. But this has never been used as a public right-of-way. So it qualifies in another manner. That language, I think, was gleaned from another resolution.
So strike during the period of 20 years, just those words in that.
Yes,
and
please.
then the rest of the sentence does make sense. Okay? Questions or comments?
Then we would ask you to adopt the resolution as amended, please.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Under old business, number 2, 5:30 p.m., public hearing on ordinance number 1609, amend Appendix B, zoning from R90 to Ag and Ag to R60. And this here refers to the area that was the Miller edition and then was the Williams edition and then was sold and not continued. So this here is an area that has already been in the city limits, been platted, And the rezone from an R90 to an R60 reduces the minimum lot size from 75 feet to 60 feet. When a development is planned, there are streets that must first be placed into the equation, and the remainder of the property then must be mathematically divided to get the highest and best use of the property. In this particular property, the math shown is that the best mathematical use is that with the lots of approximately 67 feet in width, 8 feet narrower than the R90. With the city's required front yard, rear yard, and side yard setbacks, it would still allow for a home of approximately 50 feet wide and variable depths. The R60 does allow for twin homes and townhomes, similar to twin homes and condominiums that are located within a few blocks of this particular development. Condominiums are allowed in an R20 zoning and are owned by a homeowners association, whereas townhomes are owned by the individual who purchases it. The interior of a condominium is purchased, but the building and grounds are not privately owned. Townhomes allow for entire home ownership. One of the issues that's been ongoing in this area is because of the development was not completed and was sold prior to addressing all of the drainage issues due to the topography. This has been compounded for a very same reasons that Lake County had established a drainage board and has since decided to abolish the board in favor of disputes being resolved in a court of law. Heatherwood and Division avenues are dead ends. Up until recently, both had property for drainage that was privately owned, and the city does not have the right to go onto that property to properly maintain street drainage. In the case of Division Avenue, the city recently purchased a 33-foot by 500-foot piece of property that had been privately owned with an easement for drainage north of Division. This, however, is not the case on Heatherwood. The current established drainage is between two individual property owners on the northeast end of Heatherwood, and as such, it is their responsibility to keep the drainage opening and functioning. The city does not have any ownership, nor easement of record, nor is required to maintain such drainage. This is located along the north edge of the private property on the lot that adjoins the current property being considered for development. The problem arises because the two property owners failed to clean and maintain the current drainage. When winter snows came and filled in the drainage, and the south property owner blew the snow to the north into the drainage area, it created a lake in Heatherwood that was approximately 3 feet deep. This is not the city's responsibility, contrary to neighborhood belief. The problem was created by the two adjoining property owners failing to maintain proper drainage. Lake County's decision to abandon their drainage board leaves recourse now to be determined in the court system. Madison does not have a drainage board, leaving the neighborhood to the court system to resolve the issue. This pits neighbor against neighbor. In a recent request by a developer to offer twin homes in another neighborhood, the Planning Commission succumbed to innuendo and emotion when they denied that request. There are and were already twin homes within the same approximate distance in another direction within this same neighborhood. There were no facts presented in the discussion, and consequently, no homes have been built in the expensive development due to the higher cost of the infrastructure and the lack of interest in larger property homes. The rezoning of this current proposed parcel for development will not only resolve drainage and water issues that have plagued this part of town for years, but will also enhance the opportunities for people to not only work in Madison at Dakota State University, Madison Community Hospital, Manitou Group, and the rest of the employers that make up the employment community of Madison, but will also keep the dollars that are paid by these employers in the city of Madison rather than supporting the growth of the neighboring communities in the rural area around Madison. As mayor these last 6 years, I and many groups that would like to see Madison grow internally and attract younger persons and families to Madison see the needs that diversity in housing is an actual attractant for persons looking to be employed in Madison and calling Madison their home. The lack of diversity is a negative to the city of Madison. These are just a few of the reasons I am supporting the rezoning and the purchase for redevelopment of the property that we are discussing. Development of this property will require establishing proper drainage of the land for the benefit of all the property owners in the neighborhood and may resolve an issue out of court rather than in court. I know many of you have seen this math problem used as a demonstration that begins with 2 plus 3 equals 4, 2 plus 4 equals 6, 2 plus 5 equals 7, 2 plus 6 equals 8, etc. But what does everybody typically concentrate on? Was it the majority of positives or the possibility that one of the answers was not exactly what they expected? Of course, it's easy to look at the negative and forget all the positives that can be developed. Townhomes were recently added to the city's zoning possibilities. It is not because Madison does not already have housing that may be exactly the same in style. It is because here the person can own the entire piece of property, not just purchase the use of the interior. Madison also has many apartments of various styles that support a variety of income levels. These reside on a single described piece of property and are owned by one person or entity. There is an area in the north edge of this property that is proposed that would allow for townhomes. Townhomes are adjoined properties that each have a single property description and are individually owned. This is the difference from a condominium, full property ownership. As far as the other lots being smaller than an R90 single-family residence, the R60 allows reduced costs to build a similar priced home on the same property. The costs of infrastructure are reduced. That's where the savings comes into place. I can remember when Madison's R90 minimum lot size was 50 feet. And there are a large number of homes in Madison on 50-foot and larger lots. Failure of the City Commission to approve this rezoning request will be doing a disservice to the entire community of the City of Madison. So that's the background and the spiel that I have to say about this development and that we're looking at right here. Now it is public hearing, so is there anyone that would like to speak on this issue?
Yeah, Mayor,
would you come to the microphone, please, and identify yourself for the people at home?
Darren Nampkin on 1016 Heatherwood.
Okay.
I didn't really have anything to say until your comments. I'm kind of curious to know about the legal things that I was to have with the owner next to me on drainage.
The piece of property that we recently purchased at the north end of the division was
I'm not worried about that.
But you have to listen. This is the differences. That piece of property was held by the developer, and so he only owned a 33-foot by 500-foot long piece to maintain the drainage on Division, but he did not maintain any on the north end of Heatherwood. And so then we go back to state law, and state law says that water has a right to continue flowing, and when when the current owner of that land bought it, he said, I don't want to be a developer. I want to be a farmer. We as a city have worked with him. We have offered him, and Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, we've offered him a drop inlet. We've offered him things in that he would need to put drainage in, and money towards that. And he's turned it all down. So when it comes back to the drainage issue then falls on where the water would naturally flow. And on the north side of your property, there's a ditch that was put in there for that water to flow. But the city does not have any obligation, nor do they have any right to keep it open and maintain it for that water drainage. So when the water was 3 feet deep in front of your house, I made the decision as mayor after contacting David Jenks, and we busted through that thing with the payloader to get that 3 feet of water off from in front of your house.
I was just hearing that it was my legal obligation to remove water.
It's yours and the neighbors to keep that drainage way open.
Yeah, but we really don't have a drainage problem there.
We do.
It's a snow removal problem.
That is what creates the drainage, because
Correct.
Mother Nature filled that ditch in, and then when you blew the snow north, you added to it, and that created the dam from water going east. Because when the snow was pushed north, it was pushed past the end of that little
About 3
ditch.
feet after the curb, and everything flows fine.
I'm
I
not
was not aware of any legal obligations that I had to make sure.
And
that was
and
done.
I'm sure
So,
you weren't. I'm
that-
sure you weren't,
that's the
because
first
it was
I've heard of it in 12 years.
it was in the researching of this that I found that what we did to open that up wasn't legal, but we did it.
So it's my responsibility to take the pile of dirt at the end of the driveway that is currently sitting there now too?
That dirt was put there when we busted through it. So, and soon when it gets
So-
dried up, then that we can clean it to the end of the pavement. You know, so but when it comes down to this development, if we get this developed, that'll take care of all the drainage, not only the issues you're having, but some of the issues some of the other people are having up there as well. But to me, it was very important that I brought this out now so that people are aware that the things that, are expected of the city, there is a limit to what we can do as well.
Absolutely. I probably talked about almost everybody on this whole thing over 12 years. This is just the first that I've heard of that it's my legal obligation to be moving that water, because I just want to clarify that has never been relayed to me of water in the middle of the street. I guess I pay my taxes to have my snow moved
Right.
in front of my houses and dirt, but
Well, that was
that's
one of
where
the
water kind
reasons.
of bails up. So
That was
that's
one
all
of the
I have.
reasons. No, but that was one of the reasons why I asked the commission to buy that 33-foot by 500-foot strip of land that Miller did retain for that drainage, because we had the same thing at the end of Division, and we couldn't legally enter his property, and there was a gate put there. Here in front of your house, there was a cable there. The cable now is laying down, but the water is gone. But the further development of this property will alleviate a lot of those issues.
Yep, and I'm fully familiar with all of that stuff. So. I just wanted clarification.
Thank you.
Assuming this development moves forward, there'll be right of way going north there.
There will.
That's typically where the city
And in the
operates.
original development plans, there's supposed to be a drainage about I'm going to say about 300 feet further north.
A little bit less, I believe.
A little bit
About
less than
3
that.
lots, I believe.
And so those are things, and that, if you remember as a commission, we'd offered things to resolve this, and it just hasn't gone forward.
Can you clarify that again, Chad, just a little bit, just so that we don't run into this problem again? Because, we're going to have dead-end streets going to the north and going actually to the east as well. I just want to make sure that we have enough room to push the snow out of the way at our dead-end streets at any other development that might happen.
Expanded beyond.
Yes. Well, I just want to make sure. I mean, this is a known issue, so let's not have it happen again. Is all I'm after.
Yeah, the way that was phased with that prior owner, prior developer, was to stop there, and it created a bit of a problem, as you're aware, with the drainage. And indeed, as the mayor had indicated, part of the master plan would have provided for better drainage. Would the planned drainage facilities, drop inlets and such, been installed a couple of lots to the north? They didn't get that far before they sold the property, and a new person took that over.
Okay.
But our normal mode of operation is we want developers to take that infrastructure to the edge of the property.
Correct.
So then the next developer can pick it up there.
But in a remedial way, not pushing them off on the next developer, right?
Right.
So that it remediates any problems that they have with their property, or previous to that too, such as Darren was talking about. So that, as Mike said, we're not repeating the same problem down the road.
And as Chad and I were visiting earlier, in the city's master plan, when this area is developed, in that the master plan does show 11th Street going east to Airport Road. And so that would, allow another access and area, to and
Yeah.
from it.
From a, transportation point of view and public safety side, the sooner we could get that 11th Street to go to the Airport Road, the better off we would be. I mean, not just DSU events, but high school events that go on up there. I mean, we've done some things with no parking so we can get emergency vehicles through up there when it's, awfully busy and everything. But yeah, to have one more outlet from that area on 11th Street would sure be nice.
I'd probably reach too far, but there's always been some belief that we should move all the way down 81 over. Just come off on the north side of the
11th
Or
or
that'd be 15th.
No,
Fif-
no, excuse me.
15th.
That'd be
The near
15th.
side of the playhouse
Yes.
is 11th.
No, that'd be 15th.
Okay.
Yeah.
11th.
Well, just on the north side, the
run
playhouse
over.
would be.
11th ends on the south side.
For the same reasons you're talking about,
Yeah.
because there's so much traffic.
Yep,
on Ninth
agreed.
Street, especially in the morning during school hours. It would be nice to have another outlet to approach the schools as well as for safety reasons.
Any more thoughts on the rezone?
Any other questions or comments? All right. Seeing none, we will move on to number 3. Approve second reading of ordinance number 1609, amend Appendix B zoning, R90 and Ag to R60.
So moved?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, Jen, do you need roll call on that because it's an ordinance?
Let's do it.
Absolutely.
Please. Thank you.
Please do that.
All right, roll call. Let's do this. Commissioner Corbin,
Aye.
Commissioner Waldner,
Aye.
Commissioner Thill,
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
and Mayor Lindsay.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 4, 5:30 p.m., public hearing on ordinance number 1610, amend Appendix B zoning, light manufacturing to R20. Now this here has to do with the area that is down along the railroad, and that's an area down there that has mixed uses already. There's some R20 down there, there's some R60 down there, there's some R90. So this here is an area that is currently light manufacturing, but is being asked to be rezoned for the benefit of domestic violence. And so with that, is there anyone that would like to speak to that?
It's not for domestic violence, it's
No, it's for the possibility of domestic violence
Clarify
building
that.
their own shelter. Okay? So, yes. Thank you, Kelly.
promoting it. Clarity doesn't hurt anything.
So, I know we have supporters here in the room and that already and that, but if no one wants to speak, then we can move on to number 5, which would then be approved second reading of ordinance 1610, amend Appendix B zoning, light manufacturing to R20.
I would move that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Second.
We have a second, and Jen, would you do roll call on this one as well?
Commissioner Thill,
Aye.
Commissioner Waldner,
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Corbin,
Aye.
Mayor Lindsay.
Aye. All right, under new business. Number 2, accept revised preliminary engineering report, Banner Associates Incorporated, Water System Improvement Project. And Chad, would you address this one, please?
Thank you. I can say a few things, Your Honor, and then there are others that have contributed as well. And in addition, Mr. Dennis Rebline from Banner Associates is here to also answer any questions should there be any. But if I may start, included in the agenda packet is the executive summary from the report that was provided. We do have some hard copies of the report and some abbreviated versions have been provided to you previously in excerpts. This, I believe it was in March, we approached the commission after there was some discussions related to some additional alternatives that we should look at for the water tower, for the upcoming rural development project, due to some recent industrial development and planning and so on that were not in place when this report was originally acknowledged back in July of 18. And so after coordinating some with rural development staff and such, we talked about what is the proper course of action if we want to look at some additional alternatives, and they recommended to update this preliminary engineering report. And so we did approach the commission, again, I believe it was in March, maybe February, to ask to update and incorporate and study those alternatives, and they have been studied. And that's the main gist of what this update is. And so perhaps I'll touch on it briefly, but then I'll probably let Mr. Rebline or perhaps Commissioner Corbin or Utility Director Lawrence talk about it. But the main part of that was looking at the water tower alternatives. Should we look at other alternatives other than the single one that we studied last time, which was put the water tower in the same location? We're talking about the west water tower, the gray one. Or are there other locations that would make sense as well to research and see what would be what the effects that would be on the performance of our system, or and then cost-wise, how might that affect the cost of this proposed projects and such. And so perhaps I'll just pause at this point, stand by for questions that I may have, and let others add in. But if Dennis, if you could, would you mind talking a little bit? That's all right with the commission to
yes.
give a
and then
brief summary.
Dennis, if you would say your name on the speaker there for the people at home.
Dennis Rebline with Banner Associates. So, city engineer covered everything very well as far as what the plan was. I guess I don't know what to rehash in that. The reason we had to restudy it, the reason we chose to restudy it, was because of the industrial developments, which is 300,000 gallons per day of added demand that's going to be located out in the industrial park. So it made sense to look at, since we were replacing the west tower already in the first PDR, to look at alternative sites. There were two alternative sites, close to where the west tower was at, constructed in its place. We were also, I don't know, a lot of people were aware, we were approached about securing a property or purchasing property directly to the north, being able to build it there. And then the third alternative was to construct it out in the industrial park, which that was not a new idea.
No.
That was actually recommended in one of the previous water system studies, was to construct a third tower out of the industrial park to serve industrial park needs. Based on the analysis that we did, looking at the distribution system, we have a model of the distribution system where we're able to plot the tower in different locations and add that 300,000 gallon per day flow. What we were able to observe is locating the tower in the industrial park did not have a negative impact on your system at all. In fact, it had an overall benefit on the system. And what we saw was, if we were to construct the west tower at its current site, your average fire flow for your entire system, for every single hydrant, the average water flow based on that was going to be 1,668 gallons per minute. That's your available fire flow on average. It would increase to 1,692, and that's a result not because the tower is higher or lower, they'd be at the same elevation. That's a result of the hydrants are more concentrated around the industrial park area where the tower would be there than they are if we built the tower out at its current location. Now that doesn't mean that there aren't some hydrants that will go down and there are some hydrants that will go up. What we saw was a net decrease in the far northwestern part of town of maybe 20 gallons a minute over if we would have built the tower at its west location, which would be a difference of about 1,200 versus 11,800, just on a couple select hydrants up there. But overall, because the west tower is being replaced right now, the west tower is 25 feet lower than the tower in the northeast corner of town. Because that is the case, you operate a split distribution system. You have one pressure system in the east part of town has higher pressure than the west part of town. Well, with the construction of the tower, we're going to balance that out. So even though we may lose 20 gallons a minute compared to constructing it where it's at and constructing it at the industrial park, overall it's a net gain because we're building that tower 25 foot taller to match the east tower. So I know that's a lot of detail in that, but in the end, there are quite a few reasons to construct it at the industrial park. One of them is we can keep your current west tower in service while the new tower is being built. So that way you have that available fire flow, you have that storage, so it's not an impact on the system during construction. Two is the industrial park site is less constricted. Because it's less constricted, there's more space for them to build the bowl and build the things that they need to be built. They have a lot more room to work. Because of that, it is less expensive to construct out there. The third, which I mentioned, was the overall fire flow, available fire flow on every hydrant, the average, goes up slightly. And then the last one is, if you're looking at expanding the industrial park and having additional higher water users out there, placing the hydrant at the industrial park, I think more than doubled what you can serve out there for industry in the future. We did that analysis. I didn't bring that with, but that was another analysis that we did, which was more than what you could do if you just built it at its current site. So everything points to there is no negative, there's only positive.
Now, when you did the fire flow toward the northwest, did you, in the model, have the current size water lines in there or the upgraded size on the 22,000 feet that we're going to do as well?
We only modeled, when we compared the two tower locations, we only modeled the finished system with the upgraded water.
With the upgraded?
Yep.
Okay.
Because that was more of an apples to apples, because the
Yes.
pipe replacement is going to occur. Because of the pipe replacement, because we're going to be elevating that tower another 25 feet, that whole area out there is going to have significantly more flow and more pressure. The 25 feet corresponds to 11 psi, a little less than 11 psi.
And the other thing is that we're going from 450,000 gallon to 750,000 gallon. So the capability there, is also greater.
Yep. So.
But we'll be increasing fire flow across the board with the new upgrades on the tower.
Yes.
By going, yeah. Even though it's less, theoretically, if we were to put it there, it's still going to be higher than it is now, the fire flow.
Yeah, and again, the system as a whole, if you compare Industrial Park to its current location, system as a whole is going to benefit by 24 gallons a minute. But that's marginal when you start talking 1,650 gallons a minute flow. You're not going to notice 24. But the important thing is in the northwest part of town, the net impact is very little. And because of the improvements that are being made and the tower height change, that area is going to see significant improvement in pressure and flow.
And quality through newer pipes.
Quality through newer pipes. Yes, correct.
Any concern if there's other big housing development up in the northwest area?
No, residential demand is small compared to industrial demand.
Sure.
You could grow significantly out there and it still not be an issue. Not only that, I know the city staff has a really good handle on other improvements that are going to be taking place over time here, as far as maybe upsizing some pipes coming over that way to help with that. The truth of the matter is, geographically, the city, you can compare yourself to similar cities. And I'll just pick on Brookings, for instance. We have 4 water towers right now, and it's significantly area-wise quite a bit bigger. We're going down to 3. So we're taking one out and just going down to 3. Madison doesn't need more than 2. All it does is add capital cost, operation and maintenance cost. But at some point in time in the future, you could always, if you grow significantly, you can always add a 3rd tower out on the northwest side of town if need be. But we're confident with just some upsizing of pipes, you could serve a significant industrial development on the northwest side of town.
We've discussed that, and frankly, if we were to have a tower on the northwest part of town, it'd be kind of nice to have it further north on Union, up where a little more elevation.
And then you can construct a smaller tower and save on cost.
George, did you have your hand up?
You already.
George, would you come up here to the microphone for people at home? It makes it easier than them calling and saying, "What did he say?"
George Lee, you already have land to put this on out in the development area?
We've had land out there earmarked for a number of years, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not land that you have to purchase.
No, it's land that we've had earmarked already for a long
Yeah,
time.
that was.
Yeah.
Thank you, George.
Just a quick side question, Corbin. What happens with the telecommunications equipment?
Oh, we're just
on
going to
our
leave
tower?
that tower as is for a while.
And then decide.
We talked about at some point taking the bowl down so the structure would last longer and we could keep those communications.
Okay.
No rush
Just-
on that.
Yeah, just making sure we didn't take away something from.
The telecommunications was one thing that wasn't in the first PER. That was added into this PER as far as the cost, but it gives the city flexibility as far as whether you do want to demo the tower and put up a
Controlled
telecommunications
tower, but
put up,
sure.
or leave it.
Well, the moving in the original to take down the tower first, having to move all that telecommunication, that was going to be a huge expense. And so we're saving a lot of money by not having to make those movements, because that was over $250,000 moving them and putting them back.
Correct.
And so not having to do that is a significant savings.
And not even considering that, it's still less expensive to construct at the industrial park.
Mm-hmm.
Did we forget anything, Brad?
No, I think you pretty much covered everything.
I think the other factor, and maybe you can help me with this, or maybe Gary can too, but it seems to me when our former public works director was here, we talked about what we were going to do to preserve that painting and concerns about what we would have to do in order to make that what we have.
With the coatings on the old tower?
Yes. So this is a good chance, a good opportunity for us to not have to revisit that and try to figure out how we can.
That is true. That coating system, and Dennis and Brad can elaborate, but I'll touch on it. That coating system is not as long lasting because it's on lead right now, so we're just overcoating. That was, that's a significant cost to tear it. If we were to recoat it or paint it, so now's the time. It seems to go with the new tower rather than continue to install the paint on a shorter cycle.
And I'm not trying to do a fires for a new tower, although I'm not opposed to it. I just think that was going to do this as a factor we should take into consideration, because there was one that we talked about a few years ago that was going to start creating some concerns for us. So it's a good opportunity for us.
And that current tower is 25 feet too short. And that is causing a lot of the fire flow issues in town right now. That fixing the elevation difference and match the new tower.
And dead end issues.
And yes, because of that, to create the dual zones, you had to close water system valves to separate them. So you create a lot more dead ends. Just opening the distribution system up and going to a single pressure zone is going to save a lot of headache as far as operation goes. Going to improve fire flow significantly. Not even considering the tower location. And then the age of the current tower and the fact that it is lead-based paint.
I want to clarify that too. It's lead-based paint on the outside.
Yes.
Correct. On the outside.
The one thing I'd like to add is that the impact to the local neighborhood, because of the sites up there on the northwest tower site were so small, there was a good chance we're going to have to close down part of the roads and occupy some of that with construction equipment, because there just wasn't enough room to build the tower there feasibly. I mean, we were going to have to do some extraordinary steps, and it was going to cost the city more money to build the tower, in addition to the cost of trying to put up a temporary tower for the cellular companies and that type of stuff. So, and from an impact to the neighborhood, this is going to reduce that. I mean, obviously it goes out to an undeveloped area in the industrial site, and that, just it's a little bit easier to do it out there for that reason, but it also doesn't impact the neighborhood. So those are some things that were also considerations that aren't in the report possibly, but they're intangibles.
Non-financial benefits.
Yes.
Things that don't fit on a spreadsheet.
Yes.
Right.
But they are important.
Dennis, we talked a lot about costs and such like that, but I was wondering if you could take a moment to emphasize or be specific about the cost difference. In other words, as I recall, this was going to be, because of the cost of the tower is primarily a function of the elevation or the height of the tower.
Yes.
And because the ground elevation at both sites are nearly equal, the costs are going to be equal. But then again, we've talked about, you know, the costs for removing the cellular equipment, for property acquisitions, and so on like that. Maybe are there just a few things you can point out, and that probably will segue into some of our next items here. But
certainly
talk a little bit about the cost difference or minimal that it is.
Well, we considered the telecommunications relocation for all three of them, just to keep apples to apples, realizing that we wouldn't have to do it with the industrial park site. So just to keep everything comparative, to look at the cost. So by adding the telecommunications in and taking the cost that we had before, rebuilding or reconstructing the tower in its current location was approximately $3.8 million. Building the tower in the industrial park is about $3.5 million, so about $300,000 cost savings. And that still does take into account demolition of the old tower, construction of a monopole, all of that. And it's due to the fact that the companies that would construct the tower have a whole lot more room to work. Because of that, they can speed up the rate of construction, and because of that, it's a net cost savings. So that approximately $300,000 savings.
And the amount of time it takes to build one of these, that was the other part of this intangible, is the amount of time it takes to build a tower. Can you tell the public what that typically takes for a tower this size?
About 2 years. About 2 years. And a lot of it depends upon when we're able to bid it, because they need good 2 construction seasons.
Especially when you have 7 months of winter.
Especially when you have 7 months of winter and the spring that hasn't ended.
Hasn't started.
Well, it might be 12 months now.
Well, and a lot of it is, the tower, you have the tower foundation that has to be put in place, and that's concrete. And of course, you can't do a lot of that. It's tough to do and also expensive to do when it's cold, and it's tough to do when it's wet. And then depending upon the tower that is bid and ends up being the low bid, based on this tower size, it very well could be a composite tower that's a concrete base. So all that has to be done during good construction season. And then the bowl that sits on the top of it is steel, welded steel, and it has to be painted. And you can't paint that during winter time. So all that has to be taken into consideration. And so with where we're sitting at right now, it would likely not be completed until fall of 2021.
Other questions or comments? Okay. Then do we have a motion?
Make a motion to accept revised preliminary engineering report, Banner Associates Incorporated Water System Improvement Project.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 3, authorize the mayor to sign Amendment 1 to Professional Services Agreement with Banner Associates Water System Improvement Project. And again, I'm going to ask Chad to address this one.
Yes. Thank you, Your Honor. I'll just go over what's in the agenda packet if I could briefly. Of course, this is all related to what we're, the rural development project and so on. But there is a document in the amendments, that amendment listed as Exhibit K for the engineering agreement that was entered into with Banner Associates in December of 2018. This amendment was precipitated by the fact that, among other things, that some of it was this water tower change, but some additional parts of that was due to the fact that this is needed to have concurrence with rural development, the government agency, USDA Rural Development. So in their concurrence review process, they had to look through the entire agreement, make sure they concur, and they have a few different things that needed to be changed. And again, part of those was related to the revised preliminary engineering report. That all sort of came to play, came into effect about at the same time, and so it delayed their concurrence review some. The government shutdown delayed their concurrence review some, and so now we're finally getting to a point where we've been able to have some communications with them. They're comfortable with this amendment. It's a required document that they're insisting upon before they will concur. And they're also comfortable with the PER, this document that you just accepted. And so now it's a matter of finalizing some of those items. And also related, I believe it's a separate agenda item, is this certification. It's also a companion item to the agreement amendment. So I guess I can leave it at that, and maybe if Brad or Commissioner Corbin have to add it, or perhaps even Dennis as well. There's often communications directly with those folks that they may have to talk about some of the details that we don't always have as staff. So I'd stand by for questions, or if there's anything, Dennis, that would be salient to point out as well, please do.
Questions or comments? All right, if no questions or comments, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign amendment number 1 to professional services agreement, Banner Associates Water System Improvement Project.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 4, authorize the mayor to sign the restricted use certification page, RUS Bulletin 1780-26, Banner Associates Incorporated Water System Improvement Project. Chad or Brad, who wants to address this one?
RUS is Rural Utility Services in this instance.
Instead of restricted use. Well, all right, I'll go for that one. I had the other one in mind.
I think, Your Honor, if it's all right, I would just ask Dennis to try to step forward and talk about this certificate. Okay. He's better versed in this bulletin and this certificate than I am, if you would.
Dennis, if you wouldn't mind. And then again, for those at home.
Dennis Rebline, Banner Associates. As part of any rural development project where you have funding, which this is a project that is funded through rural development, they have a certain list of, or certain forms that we have to use and get approval. And this one that was mentioned is 1780-26. And really, it's just everything that we've done before in a different form that they require. And on this one is one that rural development wanted fees listed out separately for the different phases and alternatives and whatnot. And the truth is, it's just something that they require.
Formality.
It's a formality that they require. It doesn't change anything that you've previously agreed to. All it is a form that they require that we prepare, we sign, you sign, and they sign.
It's their form, it's what they're used to, it's what they know.
Exactly. So it does not change any of the obligations to date. It's just a form.
Okay. And the one thing I may add too, and I should have pointed out on the amendment, the item we just approved is, with that amendment, there was a zero cost change in the cost of services. So in other words, we're not increasing what we owe Banner in any way with that last change. And then some of those fees that were already negotiated and discussed and approved back in December are itemized separately in this particular form, this 1780-26. So.
And if I may, just
yes, sir.
The amendment, for instance, in the contract, it said that we were rebuilding the tower in its current location. Well, that's
yes,
no
we had
longer
to
the
change
case.
that. Right.
It references the PER dated July. Well, we're now referencing the PER dated April. So those were just some language changes that had to be done. But as the city engineer said, it's a no-cost change. It addressed maybe 4 different language points, I think, is what they wanted essentially cleared up. Again, it's dot your I's, cross your T's, make sure everything matches type of approach is what they require.
Questions or comments?
Part of the rural development experience, I guess.
Yeah.
Hopefully, periodically have these things come through. So
Great way to put it. I'll make a motion we authorize the mayor to sign RUS certification page, RUS Bulletin 1780-26, Banner Associates Incorporated Water System Improvement Project.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Number 5, authorize the mayor to sign the letter of support for Economic Development Administration Public Works Program grant application. Chad, did you want to address that?
Go ahead, we'll tag team.
I can add a few things, and then of course other parties have helped in with this as well. This is a letter of support for an EDA grant application in companion with Lake Area Improvement Corporation. You also see in the agenda packet not only this proposed letter, but a letter from Lake Area Improvement Corporation signed by Eric Brosheim, their executive director. Also included are the minutes from their meeting where that was authorized, and then a budget sheet outlining some costs. And I may invite Mr. Brosheim to come up with the commission's consent in a minute, but this is a grant for some of the improvements that would need to be made at the industrial park for the True Shrimp project. LAIC started this. My understanding is they were going to go forward with this grant application for some of their improvements they needed in the industrial park for their infrastructure as a developer, and then it became obvious that the city is going to have some infrastructure improvements in addition in that vicinity, and so we started some dialogue with LAIC, who had been working with the EDA, and it made sense to try to pursue this together, try to be co-applicants. And so that's why this is before you. I guess I can stand by now if there's any other comments or input that others may have, or Mr. Crosheim, if that's the desire of the commission as well.
Eric, did you want to speak to it?
Eric Crosheim, Executive Director for LAIC. As a result of the new True Shrimp project coming in our industrial park, we were going to be having to invest a pretty significant amount of money to improve and build out our infrastructure in the park. Because Madison was identified as an opportunity zone in the new tax bill, we qualify potentially for EDA funding. It's actually very likely that we'll get funded for 50% of not only our costs, but possibly even 50% of the costs that the city would incur as part of the infrastructure build-outs for this project. It's my understanding that the city was at the mercy of having to spend at least a portion of these dollars kind of in the future plans anyways. And this was a way for us to not only apply for dollars to help our portion of the costs for this project, but also include the city to help with a good chunk of their costs. Total dollars we're talking about for this project would be over $6 million. We would, the LAIC's portion of that would be roughly 1.2 total costs for our portion that we had talked about for roads and sewer for the park itself. The city, with some of the enhancements to electrical, water services, sewer, etc., it sounds like we'd be in for an additional 4.5 or so million dollars, maybe up to $5 million in additional costs on their front. So it only made sense for us, since we were going to be applying anyways, to include the city in that application to help get a good chunk of their costs covered for this project. So that's why I guess we're here tonight, is to talk about whether or not the city would be on board in jumping in with the application. As you saw, and as Chad mentioned, the LAIC did approve the match for half of our costs on the project, and I guess the conversation for tonight would be whether or not the city commission would be on board for including the city in as a portion of your costs as well. So, am I missing anything? No, yes.
We're doing this
Right.
anyway.
What's that?
We're doing this anyway.
Right,
Well,
so, I
yes.
mean.
Well, we're applying for grant money right now.
Yeah.
Basically, this is for an application of grant funds that you guys, to help offset the costs that you would incur, anyway.
And if it turns out that True Shrimp did not materialize, the city and LEIC neither would be out any dollars.
Right, we
But
are
if it
not going
turns
to
out that
incur
when
any
it does,
significant hard costs
Yes.
on this project until we are confident that the True Shrimp project is in fact happening.
yes.
There's a 2-year build out on that project, and so the nice thing about that is it offers us the ability to kind of hold off on some of these commitments as far as actually writing checks until we have an absolute certainty that they're coming.
Until the project is underway and we know it's
Right.
moving forward.
Right.
So this here basically, is not necessarily an obligation at this point in time, but it's the necessary application for the possibility of grant monies should this continue moving forward.
Correct.
And it's kind of a unique situation where we're actually able to get some grant money for electric upgrades, which rarely happens. So it's worth pursuing.
Definitely. When it's 50% of what you'd have to spend anyway, that's
Right.
definitely worth pursuing.
Is there any downside to this for us?
No,
I don't see
because,
any of those.
yeah, if it doesn't
No,
go
I
through,
mean,
it just drops.
I make a motion then to authorize the mayor to sign a letter of support for economic development administration for the Works program grant application.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Eric.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
Resolution number 2019-08, establish a special maintenance fee for the purpose of maintaining or repairing public improvements. And there would be no change in the amount, that it would be, the continuation of the fee that we've had going on for a number of years. Gary?
Thank you. Well, what I was going to say is
Well, you can go ahead and say it.
improvement, or no, let's keep the same price, so it's a maximum of 125 feet.
Chip sealing program working okay? Doing that annually?
Yep.
Because we pay for that with the front footage fee money, correct?
This is commonly known as a front footage fee, right?
Yes.
Okay, so everybody kind of, common language.
Sorry.
That's okay, nothing new, it's something we've had in place for a while.
I should, if I may, I
Yes,
should
John.
say, the chip sealing doesn't come from that particular fund.
What?
I just wanted
Second
that to
set?
be clear, it doesn't come from there. It's come from the second set prior
Oh,
to
well,
this,
never mind.
prior to this being in place, but it, yes, I just wanted to be accurate.
I've been speaking too much anyway.
No, that's fine.
It helps it because then this funds,
No,
that
there
we
you
don't
go.
have to use that second cent funds to do these
Thank
other
you.
road projects.
It certainly would make very, very much sense to take it from here. We just kept it in the second cent so that this fund is available for projects. We did a project with these funds in 2016 and another one in 2017. And then we've also been discussing with this rural development project
Using some of this.
using some of this as well, perhaps. And we're not for sure. We're trying to identify all the costs and all the potential sources of funding, and we want to make sure we've been very, very, very careful on using these funds specifically for these two asphalt-only projects. But we'll certainly keep you informed whether it's through the budget process or through any particular separate approvals of when those dollars are going to be spent for anything. So
I think this commission has been real good about using this exactly for its intended purpose, and we've made sure of that through the budget process. So.
This came Fifth and 7th Street up in the northwest part of town came out of this?
Yes.
And 6th Street from Roosevelt to Division came?
No, not 6th Street. The other one was
3rd
Street.
or
Correct.
3rd Street out to the airport
Correct.
road.
Yes, those were the projects that we've used this thus far.
Okay.
And it's the intent to build this fund and then use it, and then
Yes.
rebuild it for a couple of years. Right now, we've got $565,000 in there.
Well, and it's the only way that we can keep moving forward towards staying ahead of the blacktop and the city deteriorating, because it deteriorates faster than we can replace it. You know, the way the state controls the funding. So.
Takes a little time to build it up, but at least we have it, so.
And it has been, it has been $125 max since you adopted this resolution back in 2015.
Yep.
It's been several years since you've made a change.
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution number 2019-8 to establish a special maintenance fee for the purpose of maintaining or repairing public improvements.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign.
Did you
Motion carries. Do we have any public comment?
Okay.
Thanks, Gary.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, George?
George Lee. I know the weather hasn't been very good, but I've had a couple of neighbors get a hold of me. Who's supposed to be doing the terraces on Second Street?
The contractor.
The original contractor?
Correct. We extended the contract.
Yeah.
Too late. They didn't get done, and so.
Prunty?
Well, they'll have a subcontractor
Yeah.
doing it, but they're the prime contractor.
But I know the weather's been.
Yeah, the plan is to do that by the end of May.
Okay.
Get that done, way it's straightened out in the next couple of weeks, hopefully, and get it in here.
The other thing I just wanted to ask is the city trying to buy some more land
Where?
south of Cars for Less?
No? Never an intention there. The property that is south of...
That's the rumor going around town.
I've heard that too. What's happening there is the gentleman that has that property would like to subdivide it and have part of it be in the city and part of it stay in the county. Because in the county, he has to have a minimum of 10 acres to divide it, and he only has 7. And so he has been talking with the city in that he wants to downsize, put the house in the city and be able to sell it, within the city, and then have living quarters in his other smaller building. And so, but it's not moving very quickly that direction, because he has some septic issues that he has to deal with first. But no, the city has never had an intention of purchasing that land, but we have been working with him, for his benefit, if it'll work out between, what the city's requirements are and what the county's requirements are.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
helping squash a rumor. Yeah.
Thanks, George.
Yep.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no announcements, do we have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We are going into executive session at this time. Thank